This is Press Pit with Becky Walsh.
Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Becky Walsh. For the next 60 minutes, me and my two guests will be looking at the stories that are making the news. We'll look at the biggest Bristol news stories in depth, and we'll take a look at what's been making the headlines nationally. Now, granted access to the Press Pit this week is the chairman of the West of England Local Enterprise Partnership, Stephen Robertson, and also Emily Knox, founder of Right Club. Make sure you join in the conversation at home. You can tweet us your comments, views and stories and suggestions using the hashtag PressPit. Firstly though, Made in Bristol TV covers the biggest stories from across the city, so here's Bristol's news in 90 seconds. Troubled water. Parts of Bristol started the week under 5 feet of water. Storm Angus dumped unprecedented amounts of rain on our city. The flash flooding cut off homes and swallowed up cars on Whitchurch Lane.
There's only 1 or 2 cars that are actually residents round here that are actually in the water.
Not letting up. As Bristol sinks deeper into the housing crisis, Chancellor announces he's banning letting fees. Agents, businesses across the city say it could lead to landlords going rogue and rents going up.
We've seen these fees spiral, despite attempts to regulate them.
Stop it and tidy up. Mayor Marvin made a personal pledge to clean up Bristol in the next 4 years. The city chief wants us to take more pride in our streets and our neighbourhoods.
But I want to communicate today that there is hope. We can say we want to live in a clean city.
Sending out an SOS. The famous MV of Balmoral needs £500,000 worth of repairs. A slow season and technical issues have dogged the motor ship that has ferried people up and down the channel for decades.
Those of us who have worked on her for so long feel that that's something worth keeping.
And what a haul. Colton Hall bags itself £5 million worth of lottery cash to refurb the ageing Lantern performance space. It's all part of a £45 million plan to completely transform the building over the next few years.
So the Heritage Lottery Fund have given us stage 1 confirmation, and that gives us development money.
So some very interesting news stories, and you've heard about it there, £5 million being spent on the Colston Hall. Now, Stephen, you were there earlier. What do you think about the Colston Hall? Do you think it's worth the money?
I do. I think we need first-class entertainment venues here in Bristol, and Colston Hall's got such a tremendous history. It's wonderful, and when you get the opportunity to go backstage, you can just see how decrepit it is backstage. And when I arrived, there was a band arriving, and you can see this tiny little access door where you can hardly get the kit in. So they need to widen it to allow other bands and other performances to arrive. And then you go downstairs, and I guess most of us haven't been downstairs, but they've got the most wonderful vaulted ceilings that are going to become a really special performance area. And you have to say the Colston Hall is a kind of unpolished gem at the moment, and we really need to find some money, and they've done a great job on fundraising from all sorts of sources. So if any of your viewers want to send in sixpence, they'll be very grateful for it. But once it's done, once it's had its wash and brush up in the next couple of years, it's going to bring even more and better acts and performers for us to hear.
Point out that this is lottery funding that this has come from. Emily, have you gone to many great gigs at the Colston Hall?
Oh gosh, yeah, and you're going to put me on the spot now and make me try and think. Do you know what? My first ever gig was at the Colston Hall, and that was 911. I don't know if you remember them. Well, who knows? I don't really remember. But so yeah, a special place in my heart. But I mean, Colston Hall looks great from the outside, doesn't it? Now, especially that kind of beautiful gold section. So hopefully, I think this will be focusing on the inside, won't it? And sorting out the lantern, and I think they're looking at building or kind of providing a third venue within that space, which will be great, the more the better. Yeah,
and it's funny you should say that, because so many Bristolians actually say that the first gig that they ever went to was at the Colston Hall. Yeah. Now, at this time when we're hearing so much about cuts, it kind of feels quite good that it's actually getting some money. You know, there isn't normally council funding, that it's coming in another way, and it's very exciting that we're having these improvements done to Bristol.
Yeah, and there's something for everyone, isn't there? There's not just the music, there's great comedy there, and classical as well as pop. There's all sorts of stuff going on. So,
and we never know when our arena's going to be built. So at the end of the day, this is we just need to widen the dock doors and get better bands coming in. That sounds like a good thing. Now that's good news for Bristol, but obviously we've had a really devastating, awful piece of bad news for our education, for the university and for the young people of Bristol and the young students of Bristol. Tell us a little bit about that, Emily.
Yeah, so this is the story that has been around this week about the 3 Bristol University students who it's been revealed took their own lives in this last term. I mean, it's awful. You know, there's not really any good aspect to bring out of this. It's very, very sad for the families and for the other students involved.
It's a bit unusual, isn't it? Because normally suicides are brushed under the carpet and we don't hear about them. Sometimes, you know, if you lived in London, there's kind of like there's been a body under the track, but we tend to sort of shy away from it. Certain things to do with the suspension bridge and many things that have happened, mainly because we don't want to encourage other people or have copycat things.
Exactly, there is a history of that happening, and I'm sure, and there is criticism in this piece from parents of other students saying, why hasn't this been publicised? But if it had been publicised earlier, I'm sure the university could have been blamed, or the press could have been blamed for inspiring copycat incidents. It's a very difficult one to get right.
Yes, it is a very difficult one to get right. And these aren't related. I mean, these are students that have been on completely different courses. It doesn't feel like they knew each other. It's just kind of, I mean, what sort of pressure do you think our students are actually under when they go to university?
Well,
Stephen, what do you think of that?
I think we underestimate the huge difference between living at home and being in that really orderly learning environment called school, called the sixth form. And then suddenly you move an awfully long way from home. You're amongst a crowd of people who you don't know. You don't understand how university works. I think there's huge pressure on there. Perhaps added to that is the implicit financial pressure of paying considerable fees for your schooling, for your education. And then on top of that, of course, I often wonder whether this kind of enforced, joyous drinking to obliteration during the first week, Freshers' Week, is that a helpful way of integrating into a new society, or is it just complete madness? And we're quite near the beginning of the university term, and these well, I nearly said children, of course they're adults, have taken their own lives. It really is a wake-up call. We've got to find a better way of integrating those students into their new environment. But secondly, I wonder whether kids have to go away to university. These children came, these students came from Cornwall, from Hampshire. It's a long way here to Bristol. I wonder why we don't get familiar with saying, actually, you could stay at home if that's the kind of person you are, where you're going to feel more comfortable at home. Go to your local university.
Well, sometimes,
why not?
I mean, we're also going into a way where there's a lot of online courses in university. Certainly with the Open University, there's a lot of those. And sometimes I think university is a bit of a rite of passage into adulthood, like an in-between space. And I know that a lot of universities do have counsellors on staff, and Bristol University is absolutely massive, and at the moment they're not making any comment on this. There's certainly not until the coroner's reports. But I think that it's a very tricky thing, and I wonder if our universities are suddenly going to become in the spotlight over this, and whether or not that's going to be something that's actually going to spread nationally now, whether or not we're going to be looking at student welfare and mental health issues, especially around young men. What do you think, Emily?
Well, I mean, if that does happen, that's can be no bad thing, can it? I think the university, from my experience, I was a student there, and pastoral care, I think, was generally pretty good. That was several years ago, but I'm sure they are doing what they can. Any university, any good university like Bristol, you'd hope would be. Obviously hasn't helped enough for these young people, but it's very difficult to tell whether they sought out particular kind of help like that. I mean, one thing I think it's always important to say whenever we discuss things like this is that if people, you know, it often can be spotted in people. Look out for the signs of someone kind of becoming withdrawn and contact the Samaritans. Yeah, or it's easier said than done.
To see. It's easy to say, oh, you've got a hangover, or this is wrong with you, or something, and we don't tend to sort of like seek out of those things.
No, exactly.
I get the sense from this that actually pastoral care, there's a couple of comments at Bristol, looks exemplary, and it certainly the response of the university to these 3 disasters looks like is good, and a number of other students have commented on the support and help they've had from the university. So it looks like full marks. I mean, we don't know any detail here, but I'd certainly agree with the point that Emily made. I think we do need to be super sensitive to our fellow students, and obviously the university, I hope, will be looking at this and saying, are there any improvements we can make?
But I suppose another thing is, especially if it's a fresher, you're not necessarily around people that are going to spot a change in you.
It's absolutely a new environment, isn't it? It's a really new environment. So we're going to be coming back after the break. We have got our wonderful guests with us, Stephen Robertson and Emily Koch, and we'll be coming back after the break. And welcome back to Press Pit on your City TV channel. With me in the studio is LEP Chair Stephen Robertson and Emily Koch, the co-founder of Right Club. But before we get back to the newspapers, the big Bristol story is the flash flooding that wrecked around 13 cars and cut off dozens of homes on Monday. Whitchurch Lane in Hartcliffe was one of the worst affected areas in the city, with residents waking up to what looked like a lake on their doorstep. Once nearby drains had been cleared and the water began to recede, the damage could then be assessed.
Well, yesterday morning, went to work 7:30. I use this road every day. Come down the road, it was pitch black, pouring down with rain, nothing new. So drove down, got a little way down and started hitting some water. Honestly, didn't think anything of it. As I got closer into the gully of it, it got deeper and deeper, and I thought as long as there was 2 cars in front, and I thought as long as we keep going, we'll get through it. But as I got halfway down, there's a van stuck. And because of the van, the 2 cars in front managed to get round him onto the pavement, but my car wasn't moving and I just got stuck. And then I had to make a decision. I had to get out because it wouldn't go forward, wouldn't go back. Got stuck, had to get out and wade through it. It was nearly up to my thighs by then. And within an hour, it was nearly at the top of the car. It was so bad here yesterday, it was awful. So
what's the state of the car?
It's going to be a write-off, I would imagine. I've got the recovery people coming today to pick it up. Vile. It's muddy, it's disgusting, everything's obviously. So I had a load of kit in the boot, and when the electrics went, my boot opened and all my stuff was floating out. It ended up floating down the road, so I've managed to get that back and dry all that out, so that's cool.
Have you sort of had any explanation from council or anything?
No, the environmental people are saying it's council, environmental, it's the usual ping pong. We think it was the drains not cleared.
Well, no one's to blame for the weather, but nobody would want that kind of devastation on their car. What a horrible thing to have happen to anybody. Emily, how do you feel?
Oh, it's awful, isn't it? I mean, it's watching your stuff floating away out of your boot, and yeah, I mean, God, and it's so close to Christmas as well. I'm sure, you know, people, that's the last thing they want is their house or their car to be facing that kind of damage.
I mean, it could have been worse. It could have been somebody's, home, and you come down in the morning.
Lives could have been lost. You know,
all of that. But still, you just really feel for it. Especially driving through it and then having to get out of the car. Yeah. Why does it always catch us out? Because ultimately, leaves fall, drains block, storms come.
Yeah.
Come on! It's like, why did this happen?
I, not necessarily that lady in the footage there, but quite often people will try and drive through something thinking, oh, yeah, I might be all right, and then, no, you're not.
And also it's not knowing what to do, and it doesn't look as bad as it is. And we're seeing the pictures now. And I mean, obviously that's when you've got cars that are submerged, that are parked. But just when you have that thing of, oh, you know, I can get through this. And this is when people with 4x4s can be smug. You know, they can't park anywhere, but at least they can drive through torrential rain torrents.
The problem is you can't tell how deep the puddle. It looked like a puddle and you're just going to splash through it. It turns out to be a river and you disappear up to your bonnet.
Yes, up to your bonnet.
It is difficult to judge, and of course all this wise advice that you get from the motoring organisations about don't drive into puddles, and you think actually we'd all grind to a halt in Britain if we didn't drive into the odd puddle.
Yes.
So I think it is really, really difficult, but I suspect probably us drivers could be a bit smarter about how we handle our cars.
And one of the things that was happening as well was people deliberately splashing people on the road, so deliberately going really fast through puddles. That is now an offence. It is an offence.
Yes, it is.
But it's a terrible thing to do to people, isn't it?
You need to stop doing that now.
You need to stop doing that.
I did see a man walking along a pavement, and there's a massive puddle, and he was waiting for cars to go past, and then he just pegged it.
Yes.
Kind of went for it.
But it is quite exciting when it kind of like splashes either side, but not when it hits somebody else in the face. It's a little bit rude. Now, one of the other big stories that we had this week was talking about devolution. So tell us all about that, because it feels like it's going to start becoming a buzzword, this devolution of metro mayors and all sorts of things.
Well, we're one of 10 areas in England that are going to have extra powers and extra money, but we're also going to have an extra mayor who is going to be responsible for that. And 3 of the areas around here, so South Gloss, Bristol and Baines, have chosen to be part of this, and this new mayor is going to be responsible for allocating the money. Now, it's a lot of money. The government are going to give us £30 million a year for 30 years, and in the autumn statement the Chancellor said we can borrow against that in order to spend more than 30 million at the beginning. And there's going to be more powers, so we're going to take more control over things like transport and housing, for example, and skills. And perhaps more powers will come down in future. So the devolution looks like a good idea to allow local people to make judgments about how we spend money, what are our priorities, and what do we want to get done first. So I think it looks very powerful, but actually North Somerset has said, actually it's not for us, so they've chosen to stay out of this new devolved power.
Yeah. Now, really the West of England weren't mentioned that much in the autumn statement. Are we getting left behind? Is there a sense of that?
I think it's absolutely appalling that the West of England wasn't mentioned all the way through the statement, because we are very important. Do you know we're the only region outside of London that hands money back to the Treasury because we're so productive? So
really?
Actually we ought to have had our names up in neon lights, I thought. But we're not getting left behind. We're a highly productive region, and that's one of the points we make to government is, look, we're really good, we're very hard working, we're very productive, we have more start-ups per head of population than anywhere in the country. We have, after Oxford and Cambridge, the best academic cluster in the nation. So it's quite right and proper, I think, that that's acknowledged. However, the one but, I think, is that, damn it, we're not getting electrification now. It's just going to get to Bath and then stop, and this just won't do.
Well, that's still in the offing, isn't it? So we haven't got it absolutely that we're not going to get the electrification, unless you know something I don't know.
I think they're fairly clear about it. And of course, Cardiff and South Wales is going to get electrification. So do you think deferred means
cancelled? Is that what you believe?
No, I'm sure it means deferred, but frankly, it's gone back several times now, and it's the end of the rainbow, it seems. And
now, for lots of people, that idea of having like a metro mayor wasn't really a popular choice, but having, what was it, 8 billion, something, 8 million, 1 billion?
We're getting
dangled,
1 billion. Yes.
Carrot.
Yes, it is a carrot, and of course, lots of people look at Baines, look at Bath, where they were asked if they wanted a mayor a bit like Bristol has, and they said no thank you. Well, they're going to have this metro mayor over the top, and I agree it's going to add some cost, although not a huge amount, but the government were utterly clear. They said no mayor, no money.
Ah,
You
there
make
you
your
go.
choice. So
You
it's a
do.
very binary decision, and the councils have chosen to say, I'm in. So
yes.
here we
Emily,
go.
you used to work in media.
Yeah.
So what were your thoughts on all of this as well? Because when were you working within media? You were
A
writing
couple
for
of years
newspapers?
ago, yeah.
Yeah.
Until a couple of years ago.
Until a couple of years ago. So how different do you think that this is actually going to be from your experience?
Well, it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, all these changes and what does it actually mean for the people is a whole other question. It's kind of higher level, great if we get more money.
We need more money. There's so many different things that we actually want more money for. There's the electrification is one of the things, the arena is another one of the things, social care, the housing crisis, potholes in the road. I mean, is it going to cover all of these different things as well, or is it going to be, pots for this and pots for that again, as it usually is?
Well, there'll never be enough money for all of the things we'd like to do, but hey, another £30 million does a lot more things that we weren't able to do last year, so that's great news. Not to be sniffed at, exactly as Emily says.
But a bit of good news, which is we are the 4th most inspirational city. Fourth?
Yeah.
Well, we'll get this money and we will be the first.
I think what's most exciting about this, so saying we're the 4th most inspirational city doesn't sound that great, but we've beaten on the international list. We've beaten Barcelona and Florence, which I mean they're pretty special places.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I think we'd all agree Bristol's is obviously the best.
It's our number one. That's why we're here. Mm-hmm.
So this has been voted by a travel operator. It's based on our cultural offering, really, which is pretty good. Our Banksies and our
Colston Hall, getting more money coming
exactly.
in there, and also Mayor Marvin Rees is also very up on our cultural kind of idea and our arts and crafts. But also, we have a company that is coming out of Filton, which is Rolls-Royce, which is also seen as one of the best companies to work for. What do you think about that, Stephen?
Well, I think that's tremendous because this survey is saying this is a great place to be an employee, and we know that that people who are entering the workforce are often apprehensive is what's it like going to work. Well, there are some companies that are really setting the pace at being great places to work, and it's so good to see, because business often gets a poor crack of the whip because we see businesses that don't behave properly. Well, Rolls-Royce is outstanding in every regard.
Yes.
Now, the business is tough and they're having to shape their business to the future, but the fact is
it's great news, isn't it, what they've managed to do, even with all of the cuts that they've been going through. So we're going to be coming back after the break, so we will be back with you shortly. And welcome back to Press Pit. In the studio with me, Becky Walsh, is LEP Chair, Stephen Robertson, and also Emily Koch, the co-founder of Right Club. So we've been looking at some of the news stories, and I know that you have found something about a new film that's set in the Bristol area with quite an interesting storyline. Tell us about it, Emily.
This is a lovely story that has been around in the media for several years. So this is Clevedon mum, Kate Green, who died very sadly in 2010 from breast cancer. But before she died, she made a list, mum's list, to pass on to her husband to get her 2 sons to do certain things. And he wrote a book about it. It's now been made into a film with Amelia Fox. And it's being screened tonight, I think, in Clevedon. So it's kind of coming back to the place where it all happened. I mean, some lovely, really simple things on this list, like finding a 4-leaf clover or making sure that he kisses them goodnight, to things like going to Switzerland where he proposed to her. So some really lovely things.
Things like acres and acres, because that's one of her favourite words. And it's just such a beautiful story, isn't it? And I think it's a sad story, but a beautiful story. And I think it's a little bit like when mums go away on holiday and they leave a list of things to do. And
exactly. But I mean, it's something maybe we should all do in our lives, is think, a bit more about what's important and what we need to get doing in our families.
And 100 things on her list, and what a way to be able to take her with them through all of these adventures and experiences that they're going to go through doing the list. I love that story. Yeah. I think, it's one of those films that I really want to go and see, but I'm also really nervous of seeing because I just know I blub at everything. So I just know I will absolutely blubber at this. So yeah, not quite so good. Another story that we've seen is this one about sexual health, which is quite interesting. It seems that people, apart from being able to take those options into their own hands and be protected and be careful about things, but also there's getting to be an easier way of getting tested. Tell us about that, Stephen.
Well, I think it's good news because this is an important subject. It's a subject that us Brits don't talk about enough. I mean, it's a really important aspect of our health, and being launched now is a new phone line and a website that make it very easy for anyone to contact the service and then get involved in getting tested to make sure that if you have got a problem, you can get it sorted out very easily. Now, there's no embarrassment in this. It's just get on with it and make sure you're healthy. I'm sure I don't know, if you had a cough, you'd go to, actually you're not supposed to go to a doctor with a cough, but...
No, yes. Actually it's not that dissimilar to the other national health number that was working as well, the 111 number either, so it's not that dissimilar to that.
And I think the point being made here is actually these diseases are very simple to cure early days. Leave it and actually you've got something very serious that perhaps will make you sterile in future. So actually this could be a real problem for life. So it's great news that people have taken this initiative.
And also it sounds like there's going to be like a one-stop shop for lots of things like unplanned pregnancies to contraception. So this seems to be something that's also started to be taken very seriously, which I think is a good thing. So changing the subject slightly from that, there's another success story that is actually for Bath. And this is, I'm just going to pass this over to you, which is a little accessory for dancing. I think you'll find. But tell us about Love Honey, which is the company. No, I will not be demonstrating.
Oh, right,
although I probably could. I just need a feather boa. I can't be doing without the feather boa, I'm afraid.
I understand. We're not past the watershed yet, are we?
No, we're not.
So this is a business called Love Honey that's based in Bath, and it's been awarded the Queen's Award for International Trade, which is very good in these days when we need to have lots of trade around the world. And the business that was started up, I think, in about 2000. It's a relatively young business, and its sales are up nearly 30% to just a shade under £60 million, and they've increased the number of employees to 215, so it's up a quarter. So this is a great success story. Apparently a lot of its success selling sex toys has been fueled by the popularity of 50 Shades of Grey range that they have. So they've been very grateful for that series of books and the film, and it's great to have such a success. And the CEO, Richard Longhurst, who's a very amusing man, and I know he's also had his story told on television series. So
there was two of them, wasn't there? And basically they sort of came together. They were working with each other, and they came together and kind of came up with something that they wanted to do at the point of the end of the .com boom. Now, obviously, you teach business, and you know about these things. Do you think that this is a really, I mean, not obviously what they're selling, but perhaps, but do you think that this is a good business template for other UK companies to really start thinking about online export companies that actually can export around the world? Do you think it's a good time to be doing that with Brexit, or not such a good time to start those kinds of companies?
No, I think you make a really good point, because actually per person in this country, we spend more on e-commerce than anyone else in the world. We're real world leaders in e-commerce and international retailing. So they're doing a really good thing, and I encourage people at school thinking about their career, start up a business. You can actually, I mean, the World Wide Web, it does what it says on the tin. You can be sitting at home in Bath and selling around the world, and it's easier than you think. And I know it sounds a bit daunting. Actually, Richard Longhurst has just got on and done it with an interesting product range. And I think the key thing is, don't be afraid to fail. You start a business, it falls over, learn, move on, start another business. And that, I think, is absolutely part of the creativity of this region. And the new digital world can enable anyone to have dreams of being a global e-commerce player.
So we've got the Science Park, we've got the M-Shed. Do you feel that this is a really good place, Bristol itself as a city, for companies to be able to spring up like this?
We're a brilliant place, and we've got great, our educational system here is producing some top quality entrepreneurs. We've got Set Squared at Temple Meads that is the #1 business incubator, not just in Britain but in the whole of Europe. So I think we're a pretty standout part of the world in which to start a business. And frankly, I mean, times are hard, and what you find is actually most great businesses started when times are hard, not
Yes, yeah, because you've got to kind of like go up against different things. Now, Emily, you're an author. You've got a book coming out in a couple of years' time. Are you going to be our next biggest export? You know, you've seen a gap in the market for teaching people how to be able to write books. So in a sense, you're kind of doing this something very similar to that yourself. I have online courses for people who want to create a book. So I created online courses, and again, they sell in America and Australia. So really, we can do all of these things.
Exactly. I think it's trying to find something that's different to fill that gap in the market. But sometimes you've actually just got to start till you find that thing. I mean, the Write Club that I run, it was started as a project, and then as we were running it, we were thinking, this isn't actually done anywhere else. But at the start, that necessarily wasn't the premise. It was just to do this kind of workshop setting. So I think with businesses, it's not necessarily waiting for that great idea, but just doing something, and then you work out the great idea as you go along, or you realise that you found it. Yeah.
And then sooner or later you come up with tassels.
Yeah, you come up with tassels, and it's only a matter of time for all of us. So Emily, I'm presuming your book doesn't include tassels. But has it been easy pulling students in? How have you marketed yourself in Bristol? Has it been easy to get the word out in Bristol?
It has been. It's been a classic case of kind of social media, Facebook, Twitter. Getting ourselves in a few local magazines and websites, and that's really done the trick. And then word of mouth has been great. We've sold out every session. We get 15 people along each month, and it's great. It's nice to see people getting writing. So,
absolutely, and it's nice to see people getting dancing, and you've got a bit of a story about that. And this feels like it's almost got like a gap in the market and a bit of an entrepreneurial feel. If you happen to be over 60, and where is it? They're based in Bath.
They are indeed based in Bath. They're called Yama, if I've pronounced that correctly, Y-A-M-A. And get this, it's an over 60s dance performance company, and it's this year's winner of the Cozy Feet Community Award. So well done. But the great thing is, and I don't know if this works on here, but you can see the over 60s and indeed over 70s, how they're contorting their bodies. These people have the most flexible, bendy bodies in the world. I couldn't have done this when I was 30. It's fantastic what it's doing. And I'm sure, I mean, I'm no medical person, but I can believe doing this kind of thing does keep you young. And I should imagine it is entertaining for the audience, but even more entertaining for the performers.
Absolutely, and I think at the end of the day, we see all of these really inspirational things on the internet with people doing all sorts of wonderful things. I think that we're stopping now thinking about age being debilitating. I think it's an old-fashioned concept now. It's the fact that you get old and then the stuff that you can't do. Of course, you know, your body gets tired. There are things that get a little bit more difficult, but in actual fact, it's about looking at what you can do instead of looking at what you can't do, and that definitely seems to be what they're doing in this particular story.
I think it just demonstrates the point we hear time and again, is that 60 is the new middle age.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible stuff. So we've been talking about some of the news stories that are going on nationally and at home here. We're going to be coming back in a moment talking more about some of the national stories with my guests Stephen Robertson and Emily Koch. We shall see you story. I'm Becky Walsh and this is Press Pit, your weekly look at the news stories that are getting Bristol talking. Joining me in the studio this time is LEP Chair Stephen Robertson and Right Club founder Emily Koch. So we've been looking at some of the stories that have been going on, and one that has amused me immensely is this one about baguettes. Yeah. Now, the reason being, in the picture, it doesn't look like it looks more like the kind of thing that you would put round your neck if you were going on a long journey, although you may end up with a little bit of flour-based dandruff on your shoulders. But they've got these baguettes and they've bent them. Why?
Yeah. Well, I think, this is the news story of the day. Forget the autumn statement.
Forget it.
U-shaped baguettes that fit in your bag. So this French bakery in Brittany has come up with a U-shaped design, because they say it's easier to get in your bag. And you've got those long sticks of baguettes that stick out, and you turn around and you smack someone's eye out. You don't want that happening.
But is this just a colossal joke from the French because of Brexit? They're saying, I know, this will be funny. We'll sell them some bent baguettes.
Well, I think this is all going on in France. This is happening over there, and it's caused much consternation. Lots of other bakeries very upset. This is not how it's meant to be. And the word baguette means stick, and
it doesn't look like
doesn't look like a stick anymore, to be fair.
Well, this is outrageous. First they tried to straighten our bananas. Well, of course not. This is taking place in France, but it does seem a very funny story off the back of Brexit. We're suddenly upset about bananas.
Well,
no,
baguettes.
Starts with B. I knew what I meant. What do you think about that? Would you be happy eating a bent baguette?
Well, I was just about to make that point. I mean, I'm sure it must taste just as good as these. And crunchy. But it doesn't look quite right, does it?
It doesn't. But what's good about a French baguette is it actually goes solid by the end of the day, whereas the baguettes in England can last a few days because of the preservatives. So that's what makes French baguettes taste so tasty, is you don't have all the preservatives in them.
Well, I don't know about the preservatives, but there is something about baguettes when you're in France that just is impeccable, isn't it? You're on holiday.
Yes. Now, the French bakers have called it the biker's baguette because it means that it's a lot easier to carry home if you're on a push bike or if you're on a scooter. I can see the practicalities of it, I'll have to say. And of course, we're a cycling city. Maybe we should have those. And I can highly recommend dipping it into hot chocolate. So there we go.
It's been described as a step forward for humanity.
It's a step forward for humanity.
Let's just not play this down. This is big news.
This is big news. It is the best thing since sliced bread.
Very good. Very good. Do you write all your own material?
I don't know. That one came completely from the producer into my ear. I have to be absolutely honest. Now, talking of things that are outrageous, now we've got a photo over there of MPs that are on their mobile phones. Now, people on their mobile phones drives me mad when they're walking down the street, let alone even being in cars. Why can't you look where you're going? But what are they doing on their phones? They just look like they could be, I don't know, playing Pokemon or something. I don't even know. What is that?
This is the place that makes the laws for the nation and where they debate what's good for the rest of us. And The Sun has managed to pick up a photograph. John McDonnell, he's the shadow chancellor, responding to Mr Hammond's presentation of the autumn statement. And it's a great photograph because Mr McDonnell's in full flow, but 20 Labour MPs behind him are paying no attention to what he's saying whatsoever. They're all busy on their phone. Now, the problem is I can't tell from here whether they're sending a text to their partner to say, be home by 5, put the soup on. or whether they're playing Candy Crush, or whether they're busy producing a tweet full of rare insight into the economic position of the nation.
But I mean, even if they are tweeting, which maybe could be seen to be something connected to what's going on, kind of keeping their constituents updated with what they're doing and showing that they're there, it doesn't look great, does it? It doesn't set a great example.
And I'm a public speaker, and I've known when I say something really insightful, of course, which happens all the time, people want to tweet it. But the minute they start looking at their phones, you start to become distracted because you think you're being boring and that they are tweeting that, or sending a message to their loved one. It is really distracting. I don't think if I was delivering something, I would want everyone's eye contact to be looking at a phone. I think it's kind of gone a bit mad.
This is what MPs do. We've got 650 people in the House of Commons who are there to listen, to debate. They're not doing their job.
No,
I
they're
mean,
not doing their job.
If that was air traffic control, would we be happy? We wouldn't. They should be listening. They should be listening to what their spokesman says in reply to the autumn statement. Surely one of the most important moments in the Commons calendar.
So a comment has actually been made that this has actually changed the integral nature of the Commons itself. Now tweeting and obviously wanting to be the first person to get the news out into the world using social media. Is this
that isn't their job. They're not reporters. We have reporters who sit in the House whose job is to report. Their job is to listen and contribute to the debate. And I just think this is not the thing to do.
That they are going to miss something. They're thinking back a few sentences.
You can't multitask.
No.
You know, multitasking is doing two things badly.
There is one good point here, though. I cannot see in this photograph any of our MPs involved in this. So we
just out of shot.
Well done, Bristol.
Yeah.
One of our MPs involved. That's good news. Another positive thing for Bristol. Now, another bit where we've got a little bit of legality that's gone mad, but now justice has prevailed. Tell us about Pigeon Chip Gate.
This makes me quite angry.
Okay.
So, 19-year-old Lauren Page Smith from Swansea. She took pity on a poor starving pigeon in a park. As they have a hard life. She fed one a chip, it ate the chip. She got an on-the-spot fine for littering. The chip wasn't there, the chip wasn't on the ground, the chip had been eaten by the pigeon. And so she disputed it and it got taken to court. She was told she needed to pay £100, that it kind of went up and up and up. And she said, no, I'm fighting this, and good for her, because it's ridiculous. There are bigger things for us to be worrying about than finding someone for feeding a pigeon a chip that doesn't end up on the floor. One of the comments that a council spokesman says makes the point that seagulls and pigeons cause nuisance and health safety problems. But that's not a crime. It isn't a crime to feed a bird.
No, absolutely not. And I think what's very interesting about this story as well is the fact that she's 19. And to be honest, anything to do with law or the police gave me the willies when I was 19. I was terrified. So for her to have actually taken this far with one threat after another threat after another threat, to have the actual gumption to say, no, I'm not putting up with this, I think it's an incredible story. I absolutely love it. I think it's brilliant.
Well, I don't like pigeons. I would have arrested the pigeon, frankly.
The pigeon for harassment of people eating chips.
For stealing chips.
And don't get started on the seagulls.
Yes.
Absolutely. Now, talking of not getting started, we are going to get you started because of something that you've seen in the Sun newspaper that has annoyed you immensely about our wonderful Planet Earth television.
I'm outraged, frankly, that I see on page 5 of the Sun that how dare they? People have written in to say that the sound effects that are contained within Planet Earth 2, that David Attenborough is misleading us. Now, St. David is beyond criticism. And remember, St. David started right here in Bristol, in White Ladies Road, at the BBC Natural History Unit. This man is indeed beyond criticism. And yet, we're being told that, and I want you to listen closely, the millipede's footsteps have not been properly recorded.
Well,
now, if David Attenborough says they are millipede's footsteps, who are we to disagree?
So are we saying that they were doing it old panto style and kind of like getting shoes on the table and kind of like multiple kind of noise effects going on? Get some coconuts for horse. I mean, that programme is so unbelievably incredible. The actual footage that they're getting, I mean, on that particular one, just the attack that happened with, I think it was a leopard with on the crocodile. I mean, how close did they need to be?
I haven't slept since I've seen that. I haven't been able to sleep properly.
But I keep thinking, where's the camera in relationship to this? Like, and who's sneaking up on the cameraman?
How long did the cameraman have to sit there until a leopard killed an alligator?
Well, yes. I mean, apparently it took about 3 years to actually film this because they had different different crews doing different elements of this. So is this political correctness gone mad, Emily? What do you think about this? How can we complain about millipede's footsteps? What's going on?
There is one good piece of news here that when she was very young, my daughter used to always ask at bedtime, "So, Daddy, who would win in a fight between a shark and a tiger?" And I think David Attenborough is helping us to answer those questions.
Those very difficult nighttime questions. It's very true.
Well, I think, you watch these amazing programmes and there are still people that complain. I feel they're the same people that might have wanted this girl not to feed a pigeon a chip in the park. It is that there are bigger issues potentially.
It's what
out
they call
there.
kind of like a real first world problem, really, isn't it? It's just like things that we get upset about.
Millipede's footsteps.
If you read the story closely, it says dozens of viewers. So let's imagine that's a number under 50. I should imagine.
Is this even a story?
Is this even a story? Yes, this is a very small number of people.
Oh, well, we've looked at some stories today, haven't we? And some of them have been real stories and some of them haven't felt like that. Well, thanks to Stephen and Emily for joining me. And thank you to you watching at home. We shall see you next week on Press Pit.